It began without warning, without noise, and without mercy. The stars simply vanished, one by one, like lights being turned off across the heavens. The moon turned red, then black, as if swallowed whole by something beyond understanding, and all across the earth the people looked up and saw it, not a comet, not a storm, but a rift, a great silver wound in the fabric of the night sky, tearing open like some divine eye, blinking for the first time in centuries. Out of this wound came the ships, not one, not 10, but 1,000 vessels descending in perfect silence as if gravity itself welcomed them. Their shapes were unlike anything known to science or dream. Some shaped like rings, others like bones, twisting and bending through the clouds without propulsion or wings, and in the center of them all, the mothership descended, slow and deliberate, blacker than night, larger than any city, casting a shadow wide enough to block out the sun itself. The people screamed, some ran, some filmed with shaking hands, others fell to their knees, praying or sobbing or simply watching, as if frozen in a nightmare they could not wake from. Governments scrambled jets, launched missiles, locked on with trembling fingers. None of it mattered. The weapons were like pebbles against a mountain. They bounced off the hulls, or fizzled midair, as if the laws of physics no longer applied. And then came the voice. It did not come from radios or phones, but from everything, from every screen, every speaker, every device. The same voice, cold and perfect and without echo, speaking in every language at once, as if it had no true tongue. People of Earth, your time is over. Your world has been weighed, your value calculated. You are not chosen, you are not spared. You will pay tribute to survive. The message repeated again and again, never louder, never faster, just calm, relentless, a drumbeat of domination. Tribute. Tribute, tribute, and with every repetition cities fell deeper into chaos. Politicians vanished into bunkers, militaries moved without clear commands, religions clashed over prophecy, scientists stared at their instruments in silence, unable to explain, unable to breathe. And in the shadow of the mothership above Washington, D.C., the sky lit red as a beam descended, not of light but of something heavier than light, a presence, a pressure that cracked the pavement and melted the clouds, and through it came the figure. He was tall, his armor living metal, shifting in slow ripples, his face a mask of bone with eyes like frozen suns. He stood on the roof of the Capitol building without ceremony, without announcement, and raised one clawed hand toward the cameras. I am General Varrock of the Andros Dominion. You will submit your strongest, your most gifted, your resources, and your loyalty, or you will be erased from existence. This is not a war, this is a decision. Choose quickly, for your hourglass runs thin. And just like that, the message ended. The ships held their position. The rift above pulsed softly, waiting, watching, and humanity found itself no longer at the top of the food chain, no longer alone, no longer free. And somewhere deep in the earth, something old and forgotten opened its eyes. General Varrock stood unmoving on the ruined rooftop as the sun tried and failed to break through the shadow of the mothership above him. His presence was not just visual, it was felt in the bones, like gravity had grown heavier, like the earth itself had bent beneath the weight of something far older than mankind. The message spread faster than any virus. Every screen, every satellite, every whisper across every channel repeated his words. The demands were not suggestions, they were not requests, they were laws spoken with the certainty of something that had done this before. Deliver your strongest warriors, your most brilliant minds, your rarest elements, your highest technology, your genetic archives, and your planetary loyalty. You will provide tribute in full, or your world will burn in full. This is the only outcome. Your compliance ensures continuation, your defiance ensures eradication. World leaders were dragged into bunkers, blown across oceans, herded into deep chambers, surrounded by walls of steel and fear. Generals snapped at aides, phones rang without end, presidents and prime ministers and monarchs watched the same transmission on loops, unable to act, unwilling to breathe. There was no time to argue, but they argued anyway. The Americans demanded retaliation, the Chinese urged caution, the Russians prepared countermeasures. The Europeans asked what exactly tribute meant. The African Union demanded equal say. The South Americans insisted on united defense. The Middle East fractured into silence and screaming, and through it all, the transmission continued, calm, steady. The people did not wait for leaders to act. They took to the streets, some in protest, some in prayer, some simply running with nowhere to go. Riots began not with violence but with desperation. Food vanished from shelves, gas stations overflowed with horns and panic. Others gathered together families, friends, strangers staring up at the sky, trying to feel small enough to be spared. Religious leaders spoke of prophecy, of judgment, of reckoning. Some claimed the end of days, others claimed salvation had arrived, but none had answers that could match the silence of the alien ships. In the Pacific Ocean, one of the smaller ships descended into the water with the grace of a falling feather. It hovered just above the surface, steam hissing from beneath, as fish floated dead and coral turned black. Then, with a pulse of light, the ship rose again, leaving behind nothing but a crater in the sea, where life once teemed. Inland, another ship landed in the Sahara. With no engines, no dust, it simply appeared, and the sand around it turned to glass before satellite feeds went dark. The ships were not just reminders, they were warnings, and each one made it clear that aliens did not bluff, they did not threaten idly, they enforced. Meanwhile, inside the mothership, thousands of miles above Earth, General Varak returned to his chamber. Lined with silver mirrors and pulsing walls, he watched the feeds from every continent, his hands clasped behind his back, his face still unreadable, his eyes calculating. They will offer tribute or they will fall, he whispered, though no voice escaped his mask, and no ears were needed to hear him. And still across the planet, no one knew what to do, no one but one. Deep in the dark corners of a forgotten bunker, a name was spoken, not by governments, not by armies, but by a machine that had not been activated in years, a name that triggered old files and older fears, a name that did not belong to a hero but to a weapon. The Boogeyman has been notified. The world turned under the weight of fear, but in the shadow of panic something else began to move, something colder. Something older than government protocol or diplomatic reason, not on television, not in official briefings, but in dead spaces on the net, encrypted channels with no names, known only to those who had once signed their souls over to silence. The first whisper came from a closed satellite node in the Arctic Circle, dormant for over a decade, until its signal blinked awake with a pattern no machine could replicate. 3 words formed in the void, not spoken, not typed, just pulsed like a forgotten heartbeat. Wipe them out. Military servers across continents lit up in red, a dormant alert system triggered by a name buried so deep in Black Ops archives that only 2 men in the entire Department of Defense had access, and one of them was already missing. The files were fragments, a photo with no face, a mission log with no mission, a kill count with no body trail. Whispers from foreign enemies about a shadow soldier, about a man who moved through war like a ghost, not recruited, not trained, but created by need and sustained by hate. They had called him many names across many wars: the night surgeon, the man with no pulse, the ghost of Fallujah. But the name that stuck, the one used only when the rules were gone and the end was near, was the American Boogeyman. No one called him, no one sent him. He chose his wars like wolves choose hunts, and now he had chosen again because something had crossed a line, something had put Earth in the crosshairs, and he did not ask permission to save it. While governments debated terms, and citizens begged for answers, something was already breaking into the alien network, a signal that bypassed every human protocol and pierced the alien firewall, not to negotiate, not to plead, but to respond. And the response was the same as the whisper. Wipe them out. Varak watched the message appear on his command wall, a primitive sequence delivered with brutal elegance, the symbols flickering in human code, and beneath them the image of a crude red skull painted on torn black cloth, a symbol with no translation, only meaning. He felt it, not fear but awareness. Something had entered the equation, something unmeasured, something irrational. The Dominion Council convened above the mothership, a chamber of generals and species, more machine than flesh, each one speaking in tones that cracked the air. Varak simply raised a hand, silencing them all. There is a predator among them, he said, one they do not worship, but fear, one that fights without cause or chain. He must be identified and neutralized. Back on Earth, a man moved through ruins unseen, his footsteps silent, his breath calm, his mind focused. He carried no insignia, no orders, only weapons he built himself, and a mission he chose. He did not believe in mercy, he did not believe in fate. He believed in one thing only, that monsters, no matter how advanced, no matter how large, could be hunted and ended. And now the hunter had returned, and the countdown had begun. The rain fell heavy on the ruins of an old forward operating base, tucked deep in the mountains of northern Alaska, a place scrubbed from all maps, stripped of flags, stripped of name, the perfect graveyard for secrets. And from its deepest chamber, a metal door hissed open, releasing a man who was never supposed to walk the world again. He stepped into the cold, wrapped in black from neck to boot, a long coat patched with burns and holes, like scars written into fabric. His face was partially hidden behind a visor cracked down the middle, his breath visible but his heartbeat unreadable. He moved with the silence of a man who had forgotten how to speak and had remembered only how to survive. The American Boogeyman did not rise from slumber. He did not awaken with purpose. He was not called. He simply knew when it was time, and the world had crossed a line too far. He walked to a rusted container embedded in stone. He opened it without code, without key. The lock melted from years of corrosion. Inside lay a bag marked with symbols older than his own name. Weapons designed for one man, forged not for nations, but for annihilation, for disappearing problems so completely even memory feared to follow. He checked the blades, the rounds, the toxin vials, each one coated with alloys recovered from alien crash sites decades ago, things the public never saw, things denied by governments but built anyway for one purpose, a last resort. As satellites watched the skies as drones buzzed uselessly around alien vessels, the Boogeyman disappeared into the woods, never once leaving a footprint, never once triggering a motion alert. He was a ghost, and ghosts do not follow maps across the globe. Those who had once heard his name felt it again deep in their bones. Old spies, exiled mercenaries, prisoners in black sites, they spoke his name in broken whispers, like superstition. He is awake again, they said, but no one believed it, not really, until the bodies started showing up. 3 Dominion scouts found dead in the ruins of a collapsed observatory, their armor breached from inside, their own weapons turned against them, their corpses hung upside down with ropes made from their own cables. 4 more sent to retrieve a tribute capsule from Tokyo were never heard from again. Their ship found drifting in the Pacific, its controls shattered, its hull painted with the same symbol, a red skull burned into its side. Panic crept into the Dominion ranks, not because of the losses but because of how silent they had been. No alerts, no distress calls, only sudden absence. General Varrock watched the reports with eyes narrowed, his mind running simulations, calculating probabilities. There was no human capable of this precision, no coordinated global force, no sanctioned strike team. This was something else. This was personal. Summon the sentinels, he ordered, and the chamber around him dimmed as long dormant machines awoke, weapons not used in millennia, hunters crafted to erase problems before they became threats. The game has begun, Varrock said, and the throne around him hummed with dark power. But somewhere far below, on a world choking on fear, a man without orders loaded a magazine and vanished again into the wind. Because he did not play games, he ended them. The first Dominion ship fell without a scream, without warning, without light. It was stationed above the jungles of South America, monitoring heat signatures and scanning for human troop mobilization, when suddenly its lights blinked once, then went black. The ship began to tilt slowly, as if falling asleep, and then it dropped, crashing through the canopy with the grace of a wounded animal, tearing through trees and stone before burying itself deep in the earth. By the time local forces arrived, there was no fire, no explosion, only silence, and a red skull carved into the remaining hull, with something sharper than steel and deeper than rage. The second ship never made it to the sky. It was preparing to lift off from the African coast when its main thrusters locked up in reverse direction, melting the rear of the vessel from the inside out, and sending a pulse of unknown energy through the ground for miles. The local Dominion unit scrambled but found nothing, only a single bullet left behind, embedded in a console made of materials not yet discovered by human science. The third was airborne and heavily shielded, a carrier-class warship meant to withstand the vacuum of space and atmospheric assault. Its scanners showed no threat, no anomaly, until the internal life support system triggered a fail state. Its oxygen turned toxic, its artificial gravity reversed, and its weapons system fired on itself. The last image captured by its black box showed only a shadow passing through a corridor, too fast to track, too quiet to detect. By the time the fourth ship fell, the Dominion fleet knew they were being hunted. General Varrock stood in the center of a holographic battlefield, thousands of ship icons flickering before him, many now marked with red strikes. His sentinels had been deployed, and still they returned empty. Or not at all. These were not small forces, not expendable pawns, they were elite units grown for conquest, shaped in the void, and they were being torn apart. The source he ordered, not to his crew but to the ship itself. The mother ship pulsed as it rerouted surveillance efforts and ran simulations on human patterns, but nothing matched this. No pattern, no team, no logic, just destruction, cold and Boogeyman moved through the wreckage like a shadow. Without sound, without hesitation, he took nothing left, nothing explained, nothing. He mapped their patterns their vulnerabilities, their blind spots, and he used them not just to kill but to dismantle their control. Piece by piece he turned their own technology against them, manipulating access codes, using their power cores as bombs, their communication lines as traps. In the ruins of the third ship, Dominion scouts found a message carved into the walls, not with ink, not with fire, but with pressure so precise it bent metal without breaking it. 3 words again: wipe them out. It was not rage that fueled him, not revenge, it was necessity, survival, instinct, written in flesh, honed by war, and shaped by decades of being the solution. No one wanted to admit they needed Earth, had been given a choice, tribute or extinction, but now a third option had arrived, and it war. No flag, no rank, no name, just a mission that ended with silence. They had never feared humans before. They had studied them, scanned their histories, dissected their patterns of war and diplomacy and weakness. They had classified them as emotional, chaotic, adaptable, but predictable, and above all fragile. They had expected panic and surrender, or a scattered show of defiance, but they had not expected this. They had not expected the boogeyman within the core of the mothership. General Varrock stood before a chamber, pulsing with psychic energy, a place where thoughts became data, where strategy took form. Without language, his mind linked to his lieutenants, his anger masked beneath cold logic. The map before him was bleeding red, not from battlefields, but from silence, from the voids where Dominion units had vanished. Without trace, without alarm, without resistance, he summoned the Sentinels. Again, this time, not in squads, but in waves, each one a nightmare of biomechanical fury, with armor that laughed at kinetic rounds and vision that saw through walls and minds. Alike they were his pride creations, born to erase resistance before it could breathe. Yet now he watched through their eyes as they fell one by one, not in war, not in glory, but in traps so simple they should not have worked, and yet did. One was lured into a storm drain where the walls collapsed in sequence, sealing it inside a void of electromagnetic interference. Where its link to the hive was severed, another was drawn into a factory where a cooling system was turned into a cryo-weapon, freezing its core and turning its frame brittle enough to shatter. A third never even made it to combat, its path rerouted by false data sent through hacked Dominion networks, guiding it straight into the line of fire from a prototype railgun built from scavenged alien parts. The boogeyman was not fighting them, he was humiliating them, reducing them to debris and myth and fear. He moved through their ranks like a virus made of knives, a ghost in their blood. Vark did not rage, he calculated, because even monsters feel the whisper of fear when something familiar becomes something unkillable, and the boogeyman was not just killing soldiers, he was killing morale on Earth. The people did not know who was saving them, only that something had changed. The sky still burned and the ships still loomed, but hope was no longer gone. It had grown in the shadows, in rumors, in quiet voices that spoke of a man without face, a myth given form. Again in resistance circles his name became a rallying cry. In bunkers his symbol appeared overnight, spray-painted in red skulls drawn unbroken. Drones uncrushed, scout armor, on screens hacked to flash only one phrase: wipe them out. The Dominion began to change formation, no longer advancing, now retreating into tighter groups, pulling back ships to low orbit, assigning full command sectors to defense, not offense, and yet the boogeyman moved through them like a knife through smoke. Unstoppable, untraceable, uninterested in glory. Varrock stared at the burning fleet and spoke into the core of the ship, not to his soldiers but to the ship itself, to the ancient mind that drove the Dominion forward. Find him, break him, unmake him, and if he cannot be unmade, then burn the world until he chooses to die with it. The sky pulsed with silent thunder as Earth held its breath below fleets of Dominion. Ships hovered, no longer moving, no longer striking, as if waiting for something they could not see, as if searching for something that refused to be found. Above them the mothership loomed vast and ancient, a fortress built not just for war but for domination, and inside it, at the heart of its power, beat the engine that sustained the invasion, a core that pulsed with energy older than stars, and buried within its circuits was the key to everything. He had seen it weeks ago, not through blueprints or stolen files but through instinct, the way a predator knows where the vein is. The boogeyman had traced their patterns, followed their command loops, decoded their infrastructure until he understood the truth. The Dominion was centralized, deficient, but overconfident, and it made them vulnerable. Destroy the core and the fleet dies not in fire, not in chaos, but in collapse. And So the final climb began, not up a mountain, not through rubble, but through layers of alien steel and skin. The boogeyman breached the mothership from below, using a stolen transport drone gutted and rewired with human hands. He entered the underbelly of the ship through a blind spot they had not noticed until it was too late. The hallways were dark and alive, every wall shifting with pulse and motion, like muscle and bone, the air thick with something not quite smoke, not quite breath. He moved through it like he always had, without fear, without doubt, without sound, each step calculated, each breath measured, each second closer to the target. He encountered guards, none of them survived. He encountered scanners, none of them reported back. He rewrote their code in seconds, turned their eyes against them, turned their strength into silent sand. The closer he got, the more the ship seemed to notice, not through alarms but through resistance. The walls closed in tighter lights, blinked with more urgency. Drones appeared from nowhere, fast and armored and burning with Dominion power, and yet he slipped past them or cut through them or dropped them with one shot before disappearing. Again, meanwhile, Earth waited. Some watched the sky, some prayed, some loaded weapons. They would never fire, all of them unaware that one man was already inside the storm. General Varrock stood in the throne chamber, his hands wrapped around the core interface, his mind pulsing with warning after warning. Proximity breach, internal anomaly, system infection, still no confirmation, still no visual, only shadows, only silence, only fear. He is here. Varrock whispered to the ship itself, and the chamber around him began to change walls, opening weapons, descending lights, shifting from white to blood red. The boogeyman reached the final chamber and paused, not out of hesitation but precision. He checked his weapon one last time, a single charge built from Dominion energy cells fused with human engineering, enough power to crack the core if placed just right. And just once he stepped forward into the throne room, where Varrock stood waiting, armor gleaming, sword drawn. No words, no threats, no speeches. Two monsters born of war, built for extinction, meeting at the end of the world. The throne room was alive with power, the walls pulsing like the veins of a dying god, the air so thick with charge that sparks danced across the floor. With every step, the core at the center glowed a deep, violent blue, suspended in a column of light that hummed with ancient wrath, and in that light stood General Varrock, his armor shifting like liquid obsidian, his blade crackling with pure Dominion energy, his eyes locked on the one figure that should never have reached this place. The boogeyman stepped into the chamber without hesitation, his coat torn and scorched, his visor cracked and flickering, his weapon held low but steady, as if it were not a tool but a part of him. He did not speak, he had never needed to, and Varrock did not waste words on a creature he intended to erase. They moved at the same time. The room exploded in motion, faster than cameras could capture, faster than minds could follow. Varrock's blade cleaved through air, through metal, through the memory of where the boogeymen had been, but not through him. He was already behind the general, firing once a shot that sizzled against the alien's armor, forcing him back but not down. Varrock spun, striking with the force of gravity itself, each blow shaking the floor, each swing meant to shatter every bone in the human's body, but none landed clean. The boogeyman moved with impossible precision, his body a blur of muscle and intent, dodging, countering, drawing Varrock deeper into the chamber. Step by step he was not stronger, he was not faster, but he was smarter, and worse than that, he was relentless. He had studied the Dominion, he had studied their rhythms, their posture, their overconfidence. He used every moment to read Varrock's attacks, every flick of the blade, every shift in stance, every growl behind the alien mask. The battle became a rhythm, a dance of death between two creatures forged by conflict. One born of science and control, the other of desperation and darkness. Varrock caught him once, slicing across the side of his chest, sparks and blood both spraying into the air, the wound deep but not enough, not yet, and the boogeyman responded with a knife thrown so close to the core, it ignited a tremor in the chamber, slicing through one of the control conduits, and sending a cascade of lightning across the ceiling. They clashed again and again, weapons locking fists, landing bodies, breaking through walls. The core pulsed louder with each impact, as if counting down to something unseen. Last, the boogeyman fainted, stepped left, and drove his shoulder into the general's midsection, lifting him off balance, slamming him back into the base of the core, then pulling the charge from his belt and slapping it against the central knot. It roared, the first sound he had made in battle, pure rage and disbelief. But the boogeyman was already diving clear, already rolling across the floor, already watching the glow of the charge begin to burn brighter and brighter. No victory cry, no final insult. He simply looked at the general and gave a nod, not of respect but of certainty. Then He vanished into the smoke as the core began to rupture. The sky lit up without sound, the clouds tearing open. As the mothership split in two, a beam of blue light burst from its core, then folded in on itself. Like a dying star, the Dominion fleet blinked out, not in fire, not in screams, but in sudden stillness. Their ships falling from the heavens in pieces, their systems collapsing one by one, like dominoes caught in a silent storm. Across the world, people stopped moving, stopped shouting, stopped praying, and looked upward as the shadows that had loomed over their homes for weeks began to crack and fall. The threat that had seemed eternal had ended, not with a treaty, not with a broadcast, but with a flash. And then nothing. Governments scrambled to make sense of it. Satellites sent broken data, black box fragments, strange readings, and silence where noise had once ruled. Generals called it a miracle, politicians called it a turning point, historians called it the greatest moment of unity the planet had ever known, but none of them had answers. None of them could explain who had done it, or how, or why. In the wreckage of the Dominion flagship, they found no survivors, no bodies, only broken corridors, scorched, alien steel, and a single weapon left behind, resting in the heart of the destroyed core, still smoldering, still humming with a frequency that made machines tremble. Nearby on the wall, carved deep into the melted metal, was the same symbol now painted across resistance camps and city walls. The red skulls staring from the darkness wiped them out. Some said it was an act of a lost soldier, others claimed it was a machine, a weapon built in secret and unleashed. When all hope was gone, a few whispered the name spoken only in fear. The boogeyman, in every whisper, carried weight because no one had seen him, no one had thanked him, no one had found a trace of him. He was gone as he had always been, moving back into the shadows from which he had come, not seeking medals, not waiting for applause, leaving behind only silence and so. A cabin high in the mountains, a man stood alone, watching the stars through cracked glass. His hands wrapped in cloth, his ribs broken but healing, his eyes calm, not proud, not bitter, simply waiting. He knew the world would forget in time. It always did. Peace made people soft, made them blind. He did not resent them for it, but he did not trust it either. He reloaded his gear methodically, checked the weapons he had hidden long before the invasion started, marked new routes across new maps, left no footprints, left no heat signature as he vanished again into the wind, because he knew better than anyone. This was not the end, only a pause, and monsters would come again. One day, and when they did, there would be no parades, no warning, no speeches, just a whisper in the dark and a man who never wanted to be a hero, stepping out of the shadows. One more time, the boogeyman was watching, and that was enough.